Good morning. Our agenda for the day, we'll start with our first talk from Mark here, and we'll have a 15-minute break in between, and we'll come back for the second talk. And after his second talk, we'll have we'll have coffee, different things like that still over in the gym, a chance to talk with different, we don't have questions or anything for you, but to kind of think through and discuss what we've heard. And then we'll come back in for a Q&A session to end our day. Also, if you haven't grabbed it, we do have 50 copies of The Dumbest Generation Grows Up, which is, is in there in the gym as well. So make sure to grab your copy of that before you leave. And Mark will be signing and can discuss things throughout the whole day. So without further ado, here we go.
All right, thank you. I shouldn't have a laptop here, should I? You know, I don't let students have laptops in my classes, and here I am. Actually, sometimes I would use things in classes, because there was some good stuff on the web. And that's what we're going to look at a few images in the second session today, some old paintings. Maybe we'll do a film clip from an Orson Welles film, just for fun if we have time. But I actually want to use those as little exercises to do with kids, to do with teenagers. So, but the first topic, you know, we have this digital technology, social media, and the teen angst. And we mentioned, several of you here last night, and talked about how the mood among millennials, and I think it'll be with Gen Z too, but maybe in a different mode. But you know, the millennials all feel very disappointed. They have a feeling of betrayal. And I mentioned last night that part of this was because when they were 18, because the millennials are now up to 40 years old, you know, late 30s now. And we see them as young, you know, but they're really entering into middle age, a lot of them. And they feel disappointment. And part of the disappointment was because 15 years ago, they were riding high. They were the first generation in history to grow up with the tools, with the screens, with laptops in their schoolrooms. And that had never happened before. They were unique in that regard, and they adopted the tools at age 13, 14, 15, when those brains in their heads and their sensibility in general was forming. And so they had a deeper engagement with these tools than a 40-year-old who like me, coming at these tools at age 40 and saying, no, I write by hand. I don't like writing on a keyboard. You know, I don't like walking around with, you know, things in my ears at all time. By the way, how many of you have read the book Fahrenheit 451? The Ray Bradbury novel. It's from he wrote it in 1949. The main character, Montague's wife, she always has earbuds in her ears. She's listening all the time to the media going on. It was amazing that book picked up what was coming. In fact, his wife, she has a bedroom in which 3 walls are a gigantic TV screen. Now, this is when TV had just come out, and the TV screen was about this big, right? Little sort of, you know, rounded corner screen. And Bradbury saw, no, we're going to be surrounded by screens in the future. Some people are going to love it. A few, like the main character, it turns out, are going to flee from it. And they flee into books, and books are banned. The printed page is banned in the Fahrenheit 451. It's called Fahrenheit 451 because that's the temperature at which paper burns. And in the novel, the main character is a fireman, but he doesn't put out fires. He carries around flamethrowers and the others, so that when they find someone who's been stocking books, they go in, they raid, they take all the books out, they pile them up in the front lawn, and they burn all the books. Anyway, I think the first line of the novel was, "It was a pleasure to burn." And that's how it begins. So it's taught in a lot of high schools still. I think it's a good novel. Anyway, enough of that. So, but the millennials felt very good about their prospects in 2006, 2007, 2008. And they were going to college in record numbers. They were displaying more ambition, more financial and academic and professional ambition, more than were going into professional schools or aiming to go into professional schools than any other generation. And the future looked very good for them. But now they're 35 years old. They had 520 friends on Facebook when they were 17, and that was exciting, right? That meant I am somebody. Well, when you're 35, Facebook seems not to, the thrill is gone, right? Facebook was really hot in 2010. In fact, the public offering of Facebook created a whole bunch of zillionaires in California, in Silicon Valley. They all moved out there. Mark Zuckerberg moved out there. And everyone wanted to invest, right, in Facebook. Peter Thiel. And now, Facebook is passé. People use it. But again, when you're 36, 37, it's routine at this point. And the feeling that they have, again, is betrayal. Life isn't turning out the way they thought it would turn out when they were 17. They had stories of Mark Zuckerberg, this incredible billionaire, right? The digital entrepreneur making a ton of money. They haven't. They imagined living in the hip places like Williamsburg, next to Brooklyn in New York City. Well, they do live there, but there are five. I got 5 roommates, and we're sleeping 3 to a room. And this isn't the glamour that they thought that it would be. And it's a big reason for the dissatisfaction. But there's another reason, and I talked for a moment about this last night, but just to expand upon that, what did we do? What did my boomer generation, the mentors, the teachers, the professors, the intellectuals, the journalists, the entertainers, the people who produce content? Don't you hate that word, content? They produce the content that young people would digest, absorb in classrooms, in media, in entertainment. What did we give them? No, a better question. What did we deprive them of? What did we deprive young Americans of in the 21st century? Well, one, and again I'm talking most young Americans, we're different here in this room, but most young Americans, we deprive them of one, God. We deprive them of God. Most of them, if they do believe in God, it's not through organized religious faith. They might have some vague spiritual, the therapeutic deism is a term. Well, God's just kind of a kindly uncle who takes care of things and wants us to be ourselves. That's the God that we worship. Well, that's not God, right? Especially when things aren't turning out for you. Does that kind of, God loves me and everything's wonderful and I'm wonderful, does that work when you're 40? Maybe that works when you're 17. Doesn't work when you're 40. Okay? The disappointments aren't explained by that God. I didn't get that great job I wanted. I didn't get that internship. I didn't get into that medical school that I wanted to go. She didn't want to marry me. I mean, these are just inevitable disappointments of life. That God doesn't help you very much with those ordinary ups and downs of adult life. But even apart from that, the therapeutic sort of misty spiritual kind of thing, we didn't give them any organized religion. And I think unorganized religion isn't a religion, right? It doesn't hold up. We need structures, we need rituals, routine, regularity. Prayer must be done in a structured fashion, coming to Mass, undergoing the obligations. Religion is just making you feel good. You have a certain obligation, a responsibility to assume on your own. And that's actually healthy for young people. And apart from the theology, it's psychologically and emotionally healthy for them to have that kind of regularity, okay? That organized orientation to God, to the transcendent. They don't have that. How awful is it to have no concrete, organized, ritualized faith? Okay? This is one of the things that gives foundation. It helps you through the disappointments. Okay? Christ on the cross, right? Suffering. Blessed are those who suffer. Blessed are the meek in spirit. I'm me. I've got on my Facebook page. Humility is a healthier attitude than narcissism, right? So we didn't give them. They're wandering through life with no appeal to make to the higher power. They see their own lives in completely worldly, secular, present-oriented terms. They don't even think much ahead. Okay? They don't have a plan, a 10-year plan. I mentioned last night, they're not thinking about marriage and kids. And I can tell you, in the professional world, there are many, many sharp, ambitious, highly educated, competent, talented, on-the-go 45-year-old women who have no husband and no kids. Okay? 55, no spouse, no kids. It's harder on women than it is on men, actually. But they didn't think. Okay? They didn't think about this at age 25. I had a student a few years ago who, in class, undergraduate, we were reading some novel about marriage and I said, well, look, when you get married, I'm just saying, out to everyone in the class. Now, when you get married and have kids, blah, 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 and one of them said, I'm never going to get married. You're 21. Why this declaration here? Well, what is? No, and I actually asked her. She says, career. I got to do this for myself. I've got to get my. But you're ruling out that so vigorously. Why are you so insistent on this? When you're 30, acknowledge you might feel differently about things. But if you don't have that, again, if you don't have God, if you don't have organized faith, then it really becomes a me thing, especially when you're young, okay? Which isn't going to make you happy when you're 50, I'm telling you. So we didn't give them that organized faith. We took away their patriotism. Most millennials say, I'm not a patriot. In surveys, do you consider yourself patriotic? more than half of them say, no, I don't. They don't feel a commitment to country. I remember, and I'm old enough, my father, he was in the Navy. He joined too late to see combat. He was a little too young to get overseas. If we invaded Japan, he would have gone. He would have been on a ship heading over for the invasion of the island. But all those, I grew up with World War II movies, right? They were on TV, old movies from the 40s and 50s all the time about World War II. And my father would talk about the war and that generation and the patriotism that would be in their voices when they talked about country. It was a deep, abiding, it was what my boss, Rusty Reno, calls a strong God, right? Nation, it's home, it's the patriot, the patrimony of your own country, and it's a good feeling. It's actually, when I tell people about the 1619 Project, which is 1619 because really America is built on slavery. It's the original sin of America, the slaves, and it's an orgy of guilt, of American guilt in the 1619 Project. And I just say, I wrote in this book, I said, if you think of this as a teacher here, you say to yourself, is this a good thing to tell 15-year-olds? Okay? Is this a good thing to tell African-American 15-year-olds? Your own country hates you. Your own country wants, because the 1619 is very much about the endurance of racism. It's all around us. It's systemic. Okay? They all have unconscious racism, all these people. Is this a good message? Are you telling this to 15-year-olds to make them happier? Is this going to make them feel at home in their own country? No, they're going to be alienated from their own home, their own place. And this has been going on in the schools now for decades, the idea of American guilt, and it's taken effect. And again, as a teacher, I'm looking at this as the formation of the young. You've taken away their country. You've taken away that feeling of patriotism. And if you've seen it, in someone 80 years old today who might have fought in Korea or remembers the Cold War and the struggle there, you can see in their faces the depth of feeling. And it's a good feeling that they have, right? It's a good feeling. We took that away from the young. They don't have any country. Part of this is globalization, right? Borders, think globally, not locally. Global citizens, it's a meaningless term there. But it's really about not American citizens. It's really a negation of a national identity when they talk about a global identity. And again, corporations love it because corporations don't like borders as well. Okay, we take God away, we take country away, and we took family away, right? The coherent nuclear family, the biblical model of family, we took that away, right? No-fault divorce, right? The sexual revolution, right? It's come to its fruition now. All these so-called other forms of family formation that are supposed to happen. The refusal to say single parentage is not the way to go. Two-parent household. Single parents often, they're dedicated, they try, they're devoted to their children. That single mother, it's not her fault. The husband became an alcoholic. This is not about blame. It's about the fact that a child doesn't do so well in a single-parent household as in a two-parent household. And I'll give you one reason why. Language development for a child, vocabulary development, is in a good measure based upon not direct speaking and listening, but overhearing conversation that is a little more advanced than what the child can do. The child in a two-parent household hears those parents talking back and forth and learns more language that way. Single-parent household, all the conversation is scaled down to the child, right? And so it slows the development, and the schools can't make up for this development. One thing that happens, some kids who grow up in single-parent, high TV household, they go into kindergarten with maybe a 2,000-word working vocabulary. They can use and understand 2,000 words. A child from a two-parent household hearing that conversation, and also parents read to the child, not so much TV time, what you get is a 4,000-word working vocabulary. Now, school doesn't fix this. The children get older, and here's what happened. The kid with 4,000 words learns more words faster than the 2,000 words. It's called the Matthew effect in cognitive child psychology. To those that have, more shall be given, all right? More vocabulary, you learn more vocabulary faster than less vocabulary. And the key component of learning in elementary school, how many words do you understand? Vocabulary is the prime determinant of being able to do well in school, in the elementary grades. When you start getting into separate subjects, it's a little different. Anyway, so God, country, nation, family. We broke all those down. Liberal, secular, liberal, modern society does this. That's the tendency. That's where it goes. It is individualism. That's the basis of liberalism. Individual life. Individual rational choice. It's not about larger structures. Communities, churches, families, even nation, not to mention the God. Liberalism brings all the attention down into the soul self. Think Henry David Thoreau going to the woods and living on his own. That's a model liberal individual in American life. So, what's the impact of this? Well, liberalism cannot admit this is a terrible thing to happen to young people. It's a terrible thing not to give them these bigger structures. Well, these bigger structures can be oppressive. Well, I guess there are times when they can be overwrought. Some things ought to be oppressed in individual desire. Let's remember this. Not all individual passions are a good thing. Okay? The individual self needs guidance. We can't save ourselves. We can't overcome our original sin on our own. We need help. That's why the structures, including the structures of the church, are so important. Take away the structures, and you end up with a wayward, unhappy youth. The youth who pursues career, right? Who pursues hedonism. These are not answers. I mean, the career looks like success, but you all know, once you reach your basic needs, if you have enough money, let's say it takes $50,000 for you to satisfy basic needs of decent housing, not a big house, decent housing. You're not hungry. You might live a very modest life, but you're not suffering. Beyond that threshold of meeting basic needs, there is no correlation between more money and more happiness. No correlation. So if you make $180,000 so you can save a lot of money, you can go on trips, making $250,000 isn't going to make you happier. That's not a gain. So that ambition, that drive, that success, beyond that certain point of security, doesn't do it for you. So we talked last night about idols. That idol of success, it is a false god, right? Not going to do it for you. So that's what leads to a lot of the unhappiness that we see in millennials as they're entering into middle age. And I feel like I can talk a little bit about this because, I was baptized Catholic. I had Catholic parents. They grew up going to Catholic schools. My father was an altar boy. He came from a German-English family in Kansas. My mother was Irish Catholic in Colorado, up in the mountains of Leadville, where she was born and grew up. And their lives were very much about the church every weekend and the Catholic schools and all week. And they're in Kansas every Friday. They all did their prayers, and at the end of the day, they had one special prayer set aside for the Notre Dame football game the next day. Although did we verify this? That the Notre Dame Department of Music, Gender Studies, and American Studies is hosting a drag show. Have you seen this? So this is happening. I saw this on Twitter, and I thought, okay, Notre Dame too. They're going the way of, well, the Notre Dame faculty are not Catholic. Most of them are not Catholic, by the way. I had two colleagues at Emory leave the English department to be hired by Notre Dame. Both of them were very feminist liberals, male feminist liberals who didn't have 1 ounce, 1 molecule of Catholicism in their entire bodies. They were okay guys, actually. They're pleasant people, but they're not Catholic. And both of them signed that letter objecting to Amy Coney Barrett going on to this. A couple of English professors weighing in on the law. Good for them. So anyway, but yeah, so they were praying for Notre Dame on Friday afternoons back, in my father's classroom back in the 1930s there. And so my brother and I were baptized Catholic, but by the mid-'60s, my parents, they weren't going to church anymore. The '60s revolution and everything, they lost their commitment. Not only for themselves, but for their kids as well. My older sister, she went through Catholic schools, but my brother and I didn't. And there was a lot of chaos in the home. So by age 17, I had become a total, absolute, militant nihilist, right? I was an atheist. I said God is a complete fake. It's an illusion. I was reading Nietzsche and Freud and these other atheists, Marx on religion, talking about the whole institution as a sham. And I was all in on that outlook, the denial of transcendence. And I was vigorous about it. It wasn't just a matter of, well, we're just here on our own in the universe, and so let's just, go about our business. No, it was wanting to tear down, right? Wanting to demolish other people's faith, to push the word of atheist thinkers and secular outlooks on things. And I was a super lefty Democrat type who would look at, figures of religion, especially any expression of religion in the public square, as people who are either stupid or who are canny con artists, the whole bit, just an absolute cynicism. I was this way for 35 years. In fact, I came back into the church about 8 years ago. Part of it was having a child. becoming father myself and saying, do I want my son to be a miserable, nihilistic guy like his father? No, I don't. So we started going to church because of him. I started taking him there. And actually what happened, it was remarkable. We were at Princeton for the year. I was on campus on a fellowship there. And Princeton has a beautiful chapel, in fact. And they had Catholic services, and so I took my son to Catholic services. And it's a large, high chapel, and the Catholic liturgy did to him exactly what it's supposed to do. He's 6 years old. He's looking at the Gothic height pulls the gaze upward, right? Beyond the world. It's pointing you beyond this concrete place. The incense, right? The regalia, the entrance, right? The mass, I want to go. I want to do it, Dad. He hadn't done it. You can't do mass. You can't take communion. See, but he was energized by this, and it actually impressed me as that quote from the Catechism that I mentioned last night, the opening that says, "Faith, worship, love of God is written in the human heart." It was right there in him. And I said, we got to go with this, okay? He feels it. It's a natural inclination toward God. And so I actually went through RCIA. Wasn't very good at the parish I was in. I finished up doing it in Atlanta with someone very good on RCIA, and then came back into the church. And really one reason being that I understood that actually my slide into nihilism at age 17, it wasn't about theology, it wasn't about God, it wasn't about truth. It actually was a kind of psychological reaction to the insanity going on in my house with my parents. That was really a kind of sort of I think it was kind of a protective turn that sort of enabled me to get some distance on what was going on. So it was a mistake, right? My nihilism was an error. And reading the Catechism actually was, I had a friend who was in Opus Dei at Princeton who grabbed me and said, let's go through the Catechism every week. So we met every week for about 5 years. We do it on the phone. We went through the whole Catechism, reading it in detail. I said, you know something? This is right. This is better than Nietzsche. It really is. So came back in and working at this sort of Catholic magazine and raising my son through the church. And the pandemic was actually an unfortunate interruption. It really hindered sustaining that for a while. But I hope he's got it in him, and that he stays. He's at a music school in Boston. A lot of the kids, purple hair and stuff. And I said, why don't you start a Bible study group there at Berkeley in Boston with all those hipsters? See what happens. I'll let you know, Father, on how that comes out. So, all right. So I think that a lot of the unhappiness of young Americans today are because of the loss of God. And these lesser, stronger gods, nation, family, tradition, which I'm going to get to that after our break. I'll talk a bit about tradition. But that if we can take a lot of young people and we got to show them what they missed. They don't know. One thing, if you haven't gotten any of it at any time, you don't know what you're missing. They don't realize the value of prayer. Okay? you don't pray? Golly, you're missing something that is a very healthy, solid thing. Bad things happen to you, read the Sermon on the Mount. Okay? Read the book of Job. Bad things happen to you, not as bad as Job here. So, and the thing about social media, that factor. Social media amplifies all of those destructions that of God, country, family. Social media aggravates those losses. How? One, the social media connected them to one another intensely at age 17. Intensely so. Never before has any group, any age group, been so connected as they were. And it happened very quickly. There was no text messaging in 2003. 2010, text messaging, thousands and thousands every month. They're text messaging. Facebook comes along 2006. It really took off. Twitter, 2008. The iPhone, 2010, and then every successive generation. It was fast. And it immersed them in one another, and the more immersed they were in one another, the less they were able to take themselves toward the faith, toward the country, right? Toward the family. I mean, think about this, right? A kid comes home at night. When I'm 15, I come home, 1975, social life is over. There was something that is now referred to as the landline. There was only one phone in our house. It was in the kitchen. I couldn't get on the phone all night. I couldn't do anything. I mean, contact was over. It didn't mean I stopped thinking about what was going on with friends and girls and cars, but things couldn't happen, right, until the next day when I go back to school, right? So the social life ended at our front door when I went into the house. I'm in the family now, okay? Now, by 2005, the house had become different. Why? Kid comes home, 6 o'clock, grabs some dinner, and then goes up to his room, shuts the door, and that room opens out to the world. The family, everyone else is cut off. The room is connected to the video game, connecting social media, the phone is on, music is playing, the TV might be on. A lot of millennials would have the TV on all the time while they're doing social media, even while they're doing games. Multiple inputs happening. But this was socializing them 24/7, right? 85% of them, that's one statistic, would sleep with the phone on, within arm's length. Okay? Ding, a picture comes through from the party, whatever. And so that intensification of peer contact removed, again, the strong gods. Okay? They're not praying there at night. They're not reading, right? They're not thinking about what they want to do with their lives 10 years from now. It's all immediate, right now. And it makes them very busy. I remember in the 2004 election, or the 2010 midterms, when the Democrats got hit hard. All those millennials who voted for Obama in 2008, they did very well in getting out the youth vote. And they did it with social media. Obama was the first group really to exploit social media well. Howard Dean helped with that, if you remember him. They didn't turn out for the midterms, hardly at all. The millennials didn't. And they asked why, and the most common answer, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. Now, they're not too busy. Okay? Millennials had, at that time, they had about 6 leisure hours a day. They didn't do much homework, in high school. About 6 hours a day. But they were too busy. They weren't lying when they said, I'm too busy. The social media takes up a lot of time, right? I mean, you've got to keep up your network. You got to stay attentive to what's going on, messages going back and forth. If you've got 500 friends on Facebook, right? If you built up a Twitter following, if you're doing things online, creating chat groups or creating new websites or whatever, you're very, very busy. Okay? And so suddenly all this social time was being spent, and it's all about one another. Right? That was the social media. It wasn't independently the destroying these things. It aggravated the destroying simply by its opportunity cost. It took time and energy. I mean, remember, what counts most of all to 17-year-olds? Other 17-year-olds. Unless they have other voices coming in and telling them, would you knock this off and read a book? Would you knock this off? We're going to church, okay? Put that phone down. They needed to hear that. And it had to be vigilant because the pressure of the social media was so strong. And here we are with our middle-aged Americans who, again, they don't have any strong gods. They are wayward, they're unhappy, they're mistrustful, and they still have all their tools, all the social media, the things that gave them so much stimulation 15 years ago. It's not happening anymore. It doesn't work for them. They've got a big hole in their souls, right? And they don't know how to fill it in the right way. They can if we show them, right? I mean, the best thing to do is to prepare them when they're young, not to end up without God or any other strong gods in their lives. But here we are, right? Millennials are 2-to-1 Democrat versus Republican. They are very heavy on the woke stuff. They support cancel culture much more highly than older generations do. They mistrust the First Amendment. They don't like the First Amendment. They don't like free speech. They don't like freedom of religion, right? They have been catechized in the progressive way through the schools and Hollywood and entertainment and the Democrat Party. And so here they are. They need to be given the right gods, right? They need to be called back to say, because they don't seem happy. Their faith, their progressivism, their woke outlook, these people don't laugh. They don't tell very many jokes, right? They have a little bit of a punitive sensibility here. And you want to say, there's a better way. There really is. So anyway, should we have Q&A? God, I've gone almost an hour. Sorry. Is that or no, Q&A after? Okay, so we'll take a little break now. Okay, it's 10, almost 10:30. Okay, so little break and then let's look at some pictures. Okay, so we watch a little movies. Okay, all right. Oh, and if people want books, the first book I did, we have the free book, this recent one. I brought other copies of the earlier book, $10, which is my cost. I don't make money on that, but I have those also if anyone wants copies, and I can sign those as well for you. The first Dumbest Generation book, which was 2008. This later one is just last year. So. Okay.